Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning. For Tuesday, August 4th, I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Ball State game in 32 days, the game against Michigan in 116 days. Our show today is sponsored by our friends at Jeff Ruby's Columbus, proudly offering nationally acclaimed U.S.D.A. prime steaks, seafood and sushi, impeccable service, live entertainment, and an attention to detail that is simply unmatched. Just go to jeffruby.com/Columbus to check out the menu and make a reservation today. All right, we are continuing the countdown to the start of Ohio State fall practice. That happens a little later on this week, and I'm welcoming Tony Gerdeman of BuckeyeInsiders.com. He will be there for that first practice on Thursday. And Tony, I wanted to go through, it feels like we've sort of established expectations for a lot of these players, a lot of these position groups, team on the whole. But I wanted to go through which position groups might maybe exceed what we're expecting from them. And don't worry, we're not completely just homers. We're going to do a show about like which position groups might be a bigger concern than we think. So we'll kind of cover all of our bases here, but we'll start on an optimistic note. I'll share my thoughts in just a minute, but I want to let you go first here. Which position group do you think has a chance to really exceed what the baseline expectation is for them right now?
Well, if I give you an answer on this show about this position, can I also give you the same position on the next show when we talk about because I feel like linebacker is a position where there are a number of options, a number of talented options, not a lot of proven production. So I figure the expectations aren't super high, even though it is the Ohio State linebacker room, which should always have high expectations. And James Laurinaitis has been able, as the linebackers coach, to put good groups out there. But I think with all of the different options that Ohio State has, there's plenty of reason to expect some stellar play. And you bring in the experienced Christian Allegro from Wisconsin, Peyton Pierce as your middle linebacker, TJ Alford and Riley Pettyjohn as these upstart sophomores. We have not yet seen Riley Pettyjohn. He was out in the spring, so I think that's another kind of a boost that they can get from that room. And those are just four guys that we're talking about. There's guys besides those that could impact things as well, including a very good freshman class. Eli Lee, the redshirt freshman, was a star in the spring game. Garrett Stover as the backup middle linebacker. I think there's enough there for me to say I think this group is going to exceed expectations.
Yeah, that's an interesting choice. That was not the one that I had in mind, but you said it and I kind of went, yeah, okay. I mean, I can certainly see that because the expectation is not immensely high right now for that position group where I think there's questions. I think the baseline being last year's linebackers. You're not going to live up to the standard of last year's linebackers. So I think it's kind of easy to go, well, okay, so they're not going to be as good as last year's linebackers because you had two guys picked in the top 10 of the NFL draft. So that is a standard that's almost impossible for any position group on any team to ever meet again. So you're not going to get there, but there is a lot of potential in that room. And it feels like we can just sort of write Peyton Pierce in there and say, he's going to be good. Is he going to be Sonny Styles good? Is he going to be Arvell Reese good? We'll see. But I think he's going to at least give you a really good, solid base there. Christian Allegro, I know we've talked about a bunch in terms of having some really high expectations for him. TJ Alford and Riley Pettyjohn, both of those guys were impressive as true freshmen. You typically see those guys take another move, another step forward there. And then, you've got plenty of other guys who are sort of intriguing in that room. And you mentioned Eli Lee. Garrett Stover was one of those guys who got a lot of attention during the spring and summer. It just feels like there's a lot of possible answers in that room. Not too many sure things, which is why there's room sort of for the expectations to be exceeded. But you've got enough guys in there that it's like, I think they're going to have some, not just some answers, but some good answers in there, and we'll just kind of see how that all sorts itself out. My position group where I think you may see them exceed expectations is at defensive end, where Kenyatta Jackson, you know what you got with Kenyatta Jackson. I think the expectations for Kenyatta Jackson are high but extremely reasonable at this point, where you're going to have a 8-10 sacks, something like that out of him. But other than Kenyatta Jackson, everyone else is a little bit of a question mark. And it's kind of the same thing as linebacker to me, where they have lots of guys who could take that next step, who could be, you start with the veteran Bo Atkinson, who could take a step forward from where he was last year. But then you got the second-year guys. You got Epi, you got Zion Grady, and then you got the true freshman, Kari Wilder, who, whatever you get out of a true freshman at that position is kind of a bonus. Quay Russaw, we kind of lump him into this group, and I have basically been the president of the Quay Russaw fan club, it feels like, for a few months. It just feels like Kenyatta Jackson, you know what you got there, you like what you got there, and then you don't need to hit a home run on every other name that I said there, but you hit a home run or you hit at least a good solid double with a couple of those guys. I think that's going to be a better defensive end group than people are expecting right now.
I'll give you a timely reference, Tom, the 85 Cardinals, where Kenyatta Jackson is the Jack Clark and everybody else just gets on base and steals a base here and there. You said a lot of coulds in that, but this is also the second group that I wrote down for this show, and it's also a group that maybe we discuss on the next show. But I'm with you because the potential is there, and you said Kari Wilder, what could we see from him? Like, my thought is if you get what you got out of Zion Grady, as a true freshman last year, good. I mean, if he can pass by an older player, there's some positives to that. There's some negatives to that. I don't know. I think this room is probably too deep for that this year, which is a good thing. And I do expect more from Bo Atkinson, who worked on his flexibility and basically just acclimating to being an Ohio State Buckeye, which is much different than being a UNC Tar Heel. And Epi has been talked about for a while now in terms of his natural pass rushing ability. So I feel like you look at this room, you're losing first-team All-American Caden Curry and his sacks and his tackles for loss. But the amount of confidence, and it's just like when people talk about Kenyatta Jackson, it's understood. He's going to be very, very good this year. It's just a matter of, can you get what you got out of Kenyatta Jackson from everybody else? And I think that's entirely possible. And I'm really, really fascinated to see what Jackson does this year, because I could see it being really, really impactful in terms of numbers and just being a guy that everybody talks about and everybody has to be concerned about. And you go into that Texas game and it's going to be a marquee matchup against him and left tackle Trevor Gooseby, stuff like that, where he is going to be a major factor this year. So I'm good with this one. I'm thinking also tight end, where there's really very few expectations, but you bring in two veterans and maybe the guy starting is a true sophomore. And then also Bennett Christian is a veteran who's been around. So it's an experienced room. I think there's some versatility there, but I also just think there's some natural talent and pass catching ability as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good one as well, because it's not one where there's huge expectations. Really, there's almost no expectations there. It's a spot where we haven't talked about them as like, oh boy, this is a big area of concern, or oh boy, this is an area where they're likely to really be outstanding. It's just kind of, also there's tight ends there sometimes. And that's kind of been the end of the conversation. I do think Nate Roberts is someone who, if you were going to make a list of guys who the fan base's opinion changes on the most this season, I think he'd be someone who I'd have pretty high on that list, where he was kind of put in a role that everyone sort of rolled their eyes when he would trot out there as a fullback and they would pull a wide receiver off the field. This year, he's going to be someone who I think is going to stand out as a pass catcher for this offense. And you brought in another couple of tight ends who have played before, Hunter Welsing playing at Northwestern, Mason Williams having played at Ohio. I think there's some real possibility there. This is a good one as well. I would not have had this at the top of my list, but it certainly does seem like one where it's not going to take that much for this to exceed expectations, just because it feels like this is just a spot where, as much as you can not have any expectations for a position group as the for the Ohio State fan base, this is about as no real expectations as I can remember a position group being. So, yeah, if there are not any real high expectations, yeah, that's definitely a spot where you could exceed those not particularly high expectations. So, there you go, 3 position groups where you could see the Ohio State team exceed expectations this fall. We are going to do our very best to exceed your expectations at BuckeyeInsiders.com. That's where Tony and I are your team insiders. Chuck Maletti is your recruiting insider. Ross and Michael, they are your scheme insiders. Marcus Hartman, he is your basketball insider. We have a really fun and active community there as well. That board is lively already, and fall camp hasn't even started yet. So really looking forward to spending the fall there with all of our members on the Insiders board presented by Jeff Ruby's Columbus at BuckeyeInsiders.com. And we would love to see you there as well. Get access to our whole team of insiders and much more. It is a really fun community. I think you guys will enjoy that. We have some fun stuff planned for this fall. Would love to see you there as a part of all that. And thanks again to our friends at Jeff Ruby's, the award-winning upscale steakhouse in downtown Columbus, named one of the top 50 steakhouses in America by Food Network. Just go to jeffruby.com/Columbus and check out the menu and make a reservation today. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.